Hello, and welcome to Your Health Equity Matters. I'm Elgloria Harrison, the Dean of the School of Health Science, Human Services, and Nursing. And I'm thrilled to launch this podcast where we explore health topics that matter to our community with a special focus on equity. Today, we're diving into trauma-informed care for mental health and what this really matters for our community. I also learned from the New York Office of Community Mental Health that 1 in 5 New Yorkers experience mental health in a given year, and Black and Latino residents have unequal access to mental health care. So I can imagine some of our residents have experienced trauma in their lives. I can see where even language that we use can elicit a traumatic response. To help us to dive into this topic today, I'm joined by Dr. Erica Ponteen, Assistant Professor, and Dr. Sara Kotzin, Assistant Professor, both in the Department of Social Work right here at Lehman College. Welcome to this episode of Your Health Equity Matters. Dr. Erica Ponteen has been a social worker since 2009 and has practiced in a number of clinical settings to include the James J. Peters Medical Center, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, working with military veterans. More importantly, military veteran women. I love that. Dr. Sara Kotzin has been a social worker since 2002 and has conducted research in trauma-informed care in helping clients overcome traumatic lived experience to build resilience. We're so pleased that you are our trusted voices in our community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for both being here, and I'm excited to hear your insights. Let us start talking about what is trauma-informed care and why is this such an important topic. I really had started reading a little bit, but I've got the experts now. I want to know. I want to hear from you guys. What is that?
Well, when I think of trauma-informed care, I think of the framework that we can create a system and not looking at trauma as just the responsibility of the person that was impacted, but that everyone in a system can support. And there's the four words that sort of help me stay thoughtful about it, I guess, is realizing trauma is in any setting, because we don't always know who will be traumatized, right? But we know that there's, as you said, there's such a prevalence. And then to recognize what will it look like. It doesn't always look one way. And that should inform our response, whether we're as professors, as clinicians, as parents, as community members, and so that we don't re-traumatize, but that everybody has a responsibility in that system.
And just to add to that, one of the most important things is like when engaging with people with trauma to try your best to not inflict more trauma onto them and giving like a more holistic, meaningful connection, a healthy connection that they can always continue in their journey to recovery.
And how do you do that? I mean, I'm sitting around the kitchen table, for Thanksgiving. That's what I was doing. How do I know when I'm, my language is, will elicit some type of traumatic response? How do I know that? I mean, I think we're all just not aware of this.
Yeah, that's such a good question.
I think one of the things I think about when just listening, like just being aware in that awareness piece, and accruing whatever knowledge in that interaction, just being still and just hearing the person. And one of the things I try to tell people, like, okay, I am the passenger, you're the driver. And I drive just only when you need help, if there's danger in the way. But just being there to just be present, to be focused, and also to help them navigate what are some of the things what are their ouches? Like, what are the things not going well? What are things going well? But most importantly, I think just having that presence and not letting them feel alone.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna take us to like some of the things that are happening right here on our campus, right? We started the Bronx Telehealth Community Counseling Center, which is a student-run practicum or virtual health telehealth practicum, and we started that because of the need that's right here in the Bronx. Can we talk a little bit more about that? About the need of why your services is so important for some of the community members and the things that they're dealing with really has monumental consequences to their healthy lives.
Well, and everything intersects, right? So that there's, I feel like there's just so many things, and everything that, when you said this current moment, I'm thinking how there were systemic issues, problems, systemic racism. There was redlining in the Bronx. There's people who are battling immigration and fears around that. So there's the situation somebody's in, and then their environment around can just be exacerbating that situation. And so the trauma, I think there's so many layers of where somebody can be experiencing a traumatic surprise, a traumatic experience. And even I'm just thinking on the topic of immigration, there's trauma in the experience sometimes of maybe seeking asylum, can be meaning that you were leaving a trauma. And then the journey itself can have so much trauma. And then you want to get to a place where, like, this is safety. I am seeking asylum, literally seeking safety. But that comes with its own multitude of systemic, problematic, traumatic experiences.
Wow.
And I could say, to add to that the increase in mental health issues since COVID.
Right.
And then also people dealing with a lot of internal conflict from since then, of like, how could they find out who they are? How could they manage their daily life and all the changes, all the losses, grief, separation? There's been so many things that have happened. So I look at trauma not only with, the different types, but the different time periods in your life that it may impact you, that may change the trajectory of your life. So within our community, we are seeing a lot of people who are in pain.
And we oftentimes really focus on the physical health. We rarely ever, have these kind of enduring conversations about the mental health. But, without having your whole body being whole, you really can't heal one part without really understanding the healing process for the other part as well. So if we were to kind of, talk to our audience about that, because most times people don't want to talk about their mental health issues, right? Nobody wants to identify that I got a mental health problem. I always say, we joke in my family, we've got that uncle, he's a little, a little bit off, a little bit, and really what we're saying is, there are some mental health challenges, but we're not willing to talk about what they are. Why is it necessary that we should talk about what they are?
Well, for me, working with, the military population, they show up a certain way that people think they're resilient, they're strong. In actuality, mental health issues do not have a look. And just knowing that someone who shows up looking really nice, spiffy, high heels, are usually the most broken people. So just making sure to just not only pay attention to the outside, but what are they really saying and how are they behaving? Because behaviors are communications to something that's really deep going on, that's not going well for them, or they're not feeling so strong about themselves. And even in their relationships reflect some of the trauma they're inflicting on themselves, or maybe what they're inflicting on someone else.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just thinking that I think part of talking about it is just the more that our society, community is educated on what it all looks like. So because sometimes, like you were saying, like somebody who looks, very put together, can be that doesn't mean they're not struggling on the inside, right? And I just always think I've done a lot of research with children and building resilience, and so what is it? How does it show up in school? The thing is that it can show up in ways that are really disruptive. It's so we can have a lot of empathy when we're talking about it in the abstract, but to know that a child who comes in is crying the entire class, that has an impact on everyone in the room. And so often the kid gets sort of blamed, like, you need to stop crying, which might be true, and that doesn't work. And if we know, well, this might be, let's have a little empathy around that. And the trauma-informed piece, I think, is how do we create a classroom space that feels safe so that child maybe can has a chance to self-regulate, and maybe the other kids can approach with a little empathy and not like, oh, why are you crying? You're 12, you're a little old to cry. No, let's create a space and have some room to like settle down.
And so maybe that's really a good thing to talk about, because sometimes parents think it's the child.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
child's fault, right?
Yes,
You're like,
exactly.
you're 12. You shouldn't be doing this, that, and the other, right? But maybe we have to have some conversations that perhaps there's something that happened in this child's life. It's not like what's wrong with you,
Right.
but it is what happened to you, right?
Exactly.
Right.
What happened to you?
Yeah.
And then that question about what happened to you really can help us to kind of dig deeper into what might have been the genesis of what this of this crying at 12 years old could be. What can we tell our parents? What are some of the things that we might be thinking about that we can say? Mental health is okay to actually acknowledge that there is some. We're all going to need some help at some point, right? I'm sitting here with you. You all are my therapists today. And this is good because you're educating me on some of the things that I might not have been aware of.
Right.
And so as I think back to my own family, I'm like, okay, maybe that's what's happening with my nephew. Maybe that's what's happening with my little cousin. And maybe I can be better informed and help them, or help their parents, I should say, identify that these are challenges and that this is ways for them to seek support. And there are ways of being able to do. What do you think about that? You think that that's a
good
way
question.
for me to do?
So one of the things I think about, my past experience, like working under Safe Horizon and working with parents doing trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, is just looking at, the presence of not only the trauma in the child, but sometimes it's trauma within the parent. So having those moments where I'll have like these split sessions where I'm speaking to the parent about like, how has it been going and how has it been for you, for you yourself without the identity of being a parent? And then how was it to experience yourself as the parent? But also looking at sometimes maybe they both have the same symptoms, maybe different traumas, but the similar symptoms, and seeing how ways both teaching them what are the psychoeducation mean, aware of it, what are things that are setting you off at certain times a day, and what's coping strategies to help them learn to say, not only for me to model in front of the parent, but also for them to say, this is my homework and I'm going to try it. And then I check back in and say, how did it go? Did you do a good job? Like, how was it? Oh, I didn't do well in this. Okay, so let's tweak it. And then later on, bringing them together to see how they can increase their trauma-informed communication with each other.
And I think, to piggyback on that, like, our children will trigger us, like no matter what. That's not even about trauma. That's about parenting, I think, right? But I think it triggers your own childhood, you know?
Right.
And so one of the things that I talk to myself about, but also like talking to other parents, like in a clinical setting, is to kind of differentiate, like what's about me and what's about my child, and sort of separating that. But knowing, I think that can be really helpful to know that your own stuff gets kicked up, and even intergenerational trauma shows up, right?
Yes.
And that we don't always have to know, because with our kid we might want to know, or your nephew you want to really investigate. But thinking about teaching, like whether it's a school teacher or ourselves in a classroom, I'm not going to ask for the content from my students, right? But if I can go in with the awareness, like I know it's in the room, and let me just create a space that everyone will feel safer in, you know? And to your earlier question of like what not to say, like maybe just, I mean, I always joke, I love my mother, and when she likes to tell me when she hears a really bad story, like, I heard this thing today, and I'm like, you know what? That's maybe going to trigger me. So like, let's take a beat, or maybe I can't hear that right now. Like, we can be aware of what we're going to say, and that it's loaded, and everyone's nervous system is a bit more fragile these days, right?
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
You just hit a nerve right there. And that nerve is since COVID-19, and I even think before COVID-19, we all had a heightened sensitivity just because life is just so different now.
Yeah.
I think about when all the years that, things were so much calmer than what we are experiencing now. And I can imagine that, even if someone was just really, kind of moderately fragile,
Right.
this society that we're living in right now is not much helpful at all. You all talked about like some type of interventions that that you think about. Tell us about that. What does that mean? When we're talking about what could be helpful. Tell me about that.
One of the things, just to go back to your example about COVID, like that's true. And I would say that we all, having lived through it, we all built capacity. If I had spoken to your 2019 self and said, guess what's going to happen? You're going to work from home for 2 years, right? I think you'd be like, what? I could never do. And we did somehow, right? And we all built this capacity. So I think that's one of the interventions is being able to notice how we're feeling physically, like sensation-based, emotion, name it, tell someone who is safe to tell things to, and then learning to like increase our tolerance for feeling sensation in our body.
Go ahead.
So I was going to add to that because I think that's really important when looking at a different type of intervention, risk and connection, like looking at how the body and the brain works. And how people are now complaining. They would rather say not the ow in their mind or in their depression, but my stomach hurts, my head hurts, my leg hurts. So staying in tune in terms of like sometimes we may not feel safe outside, but sometimes we may not be safe in terms of our bodies and what that could manifest into. So I like when you mentioned the part about the body and how it just keeps, what would it, like Judith Herman says, keep score of the different things that happen as we move from one task to the next, to not forget, that we need the space of being safe outside and inside.
Well, you just said something that was really, we built the capacity over these last several years of being able to do things that we probably thought we would never in a million years thought we'd be able to do. And for our audience, again, I'm going to go back to say, mental health is a part of who we are. We want our mental health to be very good health as well. Just like we focus a lot of times on our physical health, we should also focus on our mental health, and not just for us, but for our families, our children, our entire community, because that is really important. Right. If we're not put together as a whole, and that includes our mental health, we are still missing some pieces of that. And I think that, when we go to nowadays that I'm older, when I go to the doctor right now, they ask me some questions that I said, now, if I was 10 years younger, you would not be asking me this question. Right. These questions about, did you have a fall recently? Or did you, are you feeling depressed? Or are you feeling certain kind of way? Right. And I said, now, I would want to say, this is my joking, I've been feeling depressed all my life. Now you're asking me that question. Right. But I think the point here is the questions are asked so that we can name it. That's what you said. Yeah. We can name it. That if indeed we are experiencing depression or some type of anxiety, we should name it. It should not be that we hide it or we're because all that does is build additional stress inside of the body. Right. And so now you have more than just a mental health problem, then you have some kind of chronic condition. And so you really want to be able to name those things. So we really want our audience to know that it's okay to say that I'm not feeling good right now, right?
Thank you. I appreciate you for saying that, because someone could, make sure they get a prescription, they take it 3 times a day and follow all those directions. But the same thing applies to your mental health. You do have to apply it so often and stick to the regimen and not forget that that's an important part of who we are and being a whole healthy self.
And as you were saying around connection, I think that's so that it's not something we do by ourselves. Like we thrive in community, in groups, in connections. And so when you share that maybe I've been feeling lonely with someone trusted, I think then somebody like appreciates that. Like, actually, I've been feeling lonely too. And, so like you said, to normalize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So today we explored what is trauma-informed care as a strength-based approach to mental health that focuses on a person's past traumatic experiences rather than just their symptoms. Instead of asking what's wrong with you, it asks what happened to you. This framework emphasizes the importance of safety, empowerment, and building a sense of control for those who have experienced trauma. We want to make sure our community knows it's okay. It's like when you take your medicine for any of the conditions that your doctor have prescribed for you. You really want to take your prescription for your mental health as well. It's okay to reach out for help. Mental health challenges happens to all of us. And at times, we all need someone to confide in and sort out our problems. They're not going to be here to help us to solve them, but they certainly will help us to sort them out. Learning to help yourself assures you can continue to help your family and your community. I want to thank Dr. Erica Ponteen and Dr. Sara Kotzin for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Your Health Equity Matters. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay informed. And before I go, don't forget, if we didn't hit on something that you were wondering about, please make sure that you drop it in the chat, and we'll be happy to kind of get back to you. Thank you so much.